When it comes to Drake, a new snippet has just surfaced, and it is exactly as bad as you would expect. Drake is now going after Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, Serena Williams, and more, all in the same few seconds of audio. If you think Kendrick and Schoolboy Q would both handle Drake without breaking a sweat right now, leave a like. And if you think Iceman is on course to become one of the most embarrassing album rollouts in recent memory, leave a like for that too.
Subscribe and stay with me, because what is in this snippet is genuinely worth breaking down carefully. Because the Iceman rollout has hit a point where Drake is scratching at anything that might generate even a moment of genuine attention. Whether this snippet came from Drake himself or from the hackers he has been blaming for everything, it does not matter. What matters is what the bars actually say, and what they say has created a new and entirely self-inflicted problem. What this snippet confirms is that Drake has been sitting at home writing diss tracks this entire time. The same person who spent a year studying not rap battles, but legal filings, the one who took his beef loss into a courtroom, is now back outside dropping direct name drops in songs. The contradiction is impossible to miss. He sued over diss tracks, and now he is making diss tracks, with real names, in real songs. That is not just hypocrisy. That is the kind of thing that permanently closes certain doors.
The bars are short, but they say everything you need to know about where Drake's head is. He references Serena Williams and her sister Venus in a way that is clearly designed to imply ongoing contact and stir tension between two siblings. And then he goes after Schoolboy Q directly, calling everyone in TDE peanuts and declaring he has no interest in making peace with any of them. That is the full content. A few seconds of audio aimed at people who are not in a rap beef with him, delivered with all the energy of someone who has been sitting on a grudge for 2 years.
And the reason this snippet surfaced when it did is not accidental. The only currency Drake has left in the cultural conversation is the drama around his crash out. Nobody's clicking because the music is exciting. Nobody's interested because the rollout is building genuine momentum. The attention exists because watching Drake take swings at people who embarrassed him has become the only thing his name reliably generates. That is a fundamentally different kind of relevance than the kind he used to have.
And the specific absurdity of what Drake is doing here deserves to be stated directly. He spent the better part of a year arguing in federal court that diss tracks should have legal consequences, that what Kendrick said about him on Wax was actionable defamation. That case was dismissed. And now, almost immediately after that dismissal, Drake is back making diss tracks with real people's names in them. If he releases this officially, he permanently eliminates whatever remained of the legal argument he was trying to make, which is actually fine. Drop it. The culture would benefit from the confirmation.
And if Drake does put this song out properly, if it goes from a snippet to an official release, he is formally re-entering the competitive arena that he spent a year trying to use the legal system to escape. He cannot go back to a courtroom after that. He cannot file another lawsuit over someone's creative response to bars he chose to release publicly. And the idea that Schoolboy Q or anyone else on that side would step up and respond properly is one of the more genuinely exciting prospects this entire era has offered.
Although every artist thinking about a response probably still has one specific concern sitting in the back of their mind: that Drake has already shown he will turn rap beef into actual legal proceedings the moment the outcome does not go his way. That fear is legitimate and based entirely on documented behavior. But regardless of whether anyone responds, the content of this snippet alone is enough to close the door on any future legal argument Drake tries to make about diss tracks causing harm. He is building the counter-argument himself.
And starting with Serena Williams as a target is the detail that reveals the most about what Drake is actually doing here. Serena Williams is not a rapper. She cannot respond in this context. She did not enter a creative competition with Drake. She had a relationship with him that ended years ago. And yet, here he is, not just referencing her again, but dragging her sister Venus into it as well, framing continued contact with Venus in a way that is clearly designed to generate tension between two siblings. This is not competitive. This is not creative. This is someone using music to interfere in other people's personal relationships.
And the intention behind the Venus reference specifically is transparent to anyone reading it honestly.
Drake is not making a point about Serena's character or her skills or her relevance to anything in hip-hop. He is trying to plant a seed of awkwardness between two sisters by suggesting he maintains a relationship with one of them. That is the entire purpose of those bars. And it reflects a pattern that has been visible in Drake's approach to beef for years, using personal relationships as leverage rather than engaging the actual competition.
Because this is the pattern that runs through every beef Drake has ever been in at the highest level. The Williams sisters, Rihanna and A$AP Rocky, Kendrick and Whitney, Kendrick and Baby Keem, Kendrick and Dave Free, Pusha T and his wife Virginia, Kim Kardashian during the Kanye situation. Every single time Drake enters a serious dispute, the first weapon he reaches for is not the music, it is the relationships of the people he is competing with. Going after families, partners, siblings, not to make a musical point, but to cause personal disruption. That is the playbook, and it has been the same playbook every single time.
And the argument that this is just how rap beef works, that going personal is fair game, is true in principle. But Drake doing this exact thing in every single beef, against every single opponent, to the point where it has become the only move he makes, that is not competitive aggression. That is a personality trait. And Kendrick named it directly on Euphoria. Once a lame, always a lame. That line keeps aging in one direction only.
And the Schoolboy Q side of this snippet carries its own specific embarrassment. Because Drake is not just taking a shot at Q personally, he is trying to use Q as a proxy argument that everyone around Kendrick is irrelevant and commercially unsuccessful. The Peanuts bar is supposed to land as a statement about TDE's commercial standing relative to OVO. And it would be a defensible argument if Drake's own label situation did not immediately collapse that entire premise. Because one of OVO Sound's most promoted and most hyped signees in recent memory is currently working as a full-time chef. The music career ended, the kitchen career began. That is the commercial legacy of OVO Sound's artist development.
And the broader OVO roster situation reinforces this at every level. Drake's label has one artist with a sustained commercial career, Party Next Door. And even Party Next Door's trajectory has been declining in proportion to how closely his output has been tied to Drake's direction. Every other OVO signee has either stalled completely or exited the music industry. For the person running that operation to look at TDE and call them peanuts requires a specific kind of detachment from reality that is genuinely difficult to explain any other way.
Because what TDE has actually produced, and specifically what Kendrick has built around him as a label operation, is the direct inverse of what Drake is describing. Baby Keem's second album opened at number 4 on the Billboard 200, moved close to 80,000 units in its first week, and placed 10 of its 11 tracks on the Hot 100 simultaneously. Not a close comparison. That is a gap.
And calling Schoolboy Q peanuts, specifically Q, is the individual bar that makes least sense out of everything in this snippet. Because Q is not a marginal figure or a critical darling with limited commercial reach. He is a multi-platinum artist who has headlined major tours, appeared on festival main stages, and released back-to-back albums that debuted at the top of the charts. Oxymoron and Blank Face LP are records that hold up in any conversation about the strongest rap albums of the last 15 years. Collard Greens and Man of the Year still move rooms. This is not someone Drake can credibly frame as unsuccessful.
And the specific choice of Q as a target, rather than someone whose commercial numbers might at least give the argument some surface-level credibility, is what reveals that Drake does not actually have a clear picture of the landscape he is trying to talk about. If the goal was to argue that TDE artists outside of Kendrick have not matched their critical reputation with commercial results, there are names where that argument has more logic. Q is not one of them. Targeting Q specifically makes the bar look less like a calculated shot and more like someone swinging at the first name that came to mind.
And Q deserves to have his catalog acknowledged properly in this context. Blue Lips, Oxymoron, Blank Face LP, that is one of the most consistently strong 3 album runs any rapper has put together in the last decade and a half. Every dimension of what makes a rap career meaningful, critical reception, commercial performance, cultural staying power, Q has delivered on all of them. The reason his name does not come up as frequently in conversations about all-time greatness is proximity.
Being on the same label as Kendrick Lamar means almost any other artist in that orbit gets framed as a supporting character, regardless of what they have actually accomplished. But the catalog speaks for itself. And Drake choosing to call that catalog peanuts, choosing Q specifically as the example of TDE irrelevance, is genuinely one of the more revealing miscalculations in recent rap history. It shows the limits of what Drake actually knows about the people he is going after. And those limits are going to be very visible to everyone who knows Q's work and listens to that bar with any real context in mind.
And this is ultimately where the Iceman era currently sits. The snippets that are generating conversation are not generating excitement about the music. They are generating conversation about how badly Drake is misreading his own situation. The bars are not landing because the delivery is not there, the production is not there, and the cultural authority required to make those bars meaningful is not there. The music sounds exactly what it is, the output of someone making an album from a place of unresolved spite rather than genuine creative clarity.
Because nothing about what is surfacing from Iceman in any leaked or previewed form sounds like a project with a clear artistic vision. It sounds like a collection of grievances assembled into song format. The flows are tired, the vocal energy is flat, the production is generic in a way that Drake's best work never was, and the fact that this album has been scrapped and rebuilt multiple times, with each version apparently failing to meet whatever internal standard the camp is applying, is reflected directly in what we are hearing.
And the snippets keep making things worse rather than better. Every new piece of audio that surfaces from this album reduces rather than builds anticipation, which is the opposite of how a rollout is supposed to function. A rollout should be building momentum toward a moment. What the Iceman rollout is doing is bleeding credibility with every new development. And the core problem underneath all of it is that the music does not sound like it was made by someone with something real to say.
The production in these snippets is hollow in a way that goes beyond stylistic choices. The auto-tune application, the mixing, the overall sonic texture, it all sounds like work that was assembled rather than crafted. And for someone who at his best was one of the most sonically distinctive mainstream rappers working, the gap between what Drake was and what these snippets suggest he currently is has never been wider or more audible.
And the stakes of all of this could not be higher for Drake personally. This album represents essentially the last major opportunity to reclaim any meaningful standing in a conversation that has moved on from him. And with every passing day, every new snippet that underperforms expectations, every new rollout element that generates mockery rather than excitement, the window for that reclamation gets narrower. There is no clear creative direction. There is no coherent vision. There is just noise. And noise without a center does not build to anything. And the fundamental contradiction at the heart of all of this remains the same one it has always been. Drake's only remaining currency for generating cultural attention is the beef and the drama around it. But he has also established himself as someone who will take that exact kind of drama to a courtroom the moment it produces an outcome he does not like. Nobody is going to fully invest in the competitive narrative when the person at the center of it has already shown they do not actually believe in the rules of the competition. Schoolboy Q and everyone else on that side knows this, the culture knows this, and Iceman is going to launch into that awareness.
And the goodwill that might have softened the landing, the institutional respect, the artistic legacy, the sense that Drake at his best was genuinely great at what he did, has been systematically depleted by 2 years of decisions that prioritized personal grievance over everything else. J. Cole stepped back from a beef, and the culture respected the craft even while disagreeing with the decision. Drake would not receive that same grace, because the craft has been subordinated to the crash out for too long for the two things to be separated anymore.
And so what we are watching is not a comeback taking shape, it is a slow and very public unraveling. Bars that do not land, targets that expose the limits of Drake's knowledge of his own industry, production that sounds hollow, and a rollout that keeps generating attention for all the wrong reasons. That is the Iceman era as it actually exists, not as it is being sold. And the gap between those two things is where this album is going to live when it finally surfaces. Check out the suggested video to see exactly how Kendrick Lamar has already been quietly setting the stage for whatever comes after all of this. And if you want a real reminder of what genuine strategic intelligence in rap actually looks like, there is a hidden reference in one of Kendrick's most recent releases that almost nobody has caught yet. It is the kind of detail that reminds you exactly why the gap between these two artists is not just about the beef, it is about how differently they approach everything. That one is in the suggested video, and you will not want to miss it.